There you go, Chris. Come on up.
Make sure I got the first
Bronwyn.
interesting name.
Thank you.
They know you by that name, or they know you by a nickname?
Bronwyn.
Ron?
Yep.
Okay, Ron? Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually communicating to most of you out on Facebook because we're here this evening at the Community Center here in Duluth Housing to do our fourth and our final open house for our residents here aboard Camp Pendleton. Bronwyn's here with some of the teams from Hunt that'll be here to answer any questions. We're also here at the Community Center so that if you're tuning in, I'd ask you to get your other residents and your friends to tune in with us because we've got some really, really good information to cover. And then after this particular period where we can take questions online from you on Facebook, we're also going to be here this evening as long as it takes. And we've got some tables set up for you so you can get kneecap to kneecap with the folks that help provide you a very, very good experience here in Duluth Housing. I've got everybody here from our private partners. Hunt folks will be here. Your district managers here. I've got some folks here from occupational health at the Naval Hospital. If you've got questions about mold, mildew, or any other potential health concerns you might have living in your quarters and your residence. I've also got folks like me and some others from the base housing office. The base housing office primary purpose is really to provide some oversight and some overwatch to our PPV partners. We work very, very closely with them. All those folks are also here with us this evening as well. So we're going to be here. So after the brief, you still got time to come on down, sit down with us. We've got some food and some other things. Love to have you come down. Again, I'll introduce myself. Probably should have done that up front. Colonel Gary Johnson. I'm the Deputy Commander at MCI West and Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. I'm here on behalf of Brigadier General Kevin Calais that runs the installation as well as multiple other installations across the western region. Why are we doing this? Well, I will tell you that we're doing this as a means to basically improve our communications. And ultimately, the purpose is to improve your experience as a resident living on board military housing on board Camp Pendleton. I'm a Marine of 30 years active duty. My father was in for 35. I've been in the Marine Corps an entire lifetime of 51 years. I have lived in onboard installations, and I lived in homes that were run by our government or by our service. And I will just tell you that since we turned it over to private venture, the quality of our homes and the service has improved dramatically. But we can always make improvements, and I think all of us realize that. The best way to make improvements is to listen to you and engage you all out there and tell us how we can do things better. And that's kind of what we're here to do this evening. So again, I hope you get some questions. The first half of the brief is going to be by Bob Marshall, Master Gunnery Sergeant retired Bob Marshall, who works in our housing office. He's going to go over a short informational brief. It's going to cover a little bit about PPV, a little bit about the Resident Energy Conservation Program. It's also going to talk about some other items that I think will be of interest to you. Then we're going to basically, when he's finished, we're going to open up for questions. And we will capture your questions on Facebook. If you've got some good ones, we'll bring them right in here for a dedicated question and answer period so that we can have that dialogue. And then again, after that is over with, we'll go to kneecap at these tables. And hopefully some of you will come down to join us. So without further ado, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all the folks here that made it to support this great initiative. And I'm going to turn it over to Bob Marshall. Sir, over to you.
Good evening. I'm going to start off with this brief here for about 30 minutes like the Colonel said. First thing I want to do is just put up the purpose of this brief like the Colonel had mentioned. Increase the communications and then at the same time cover the 6 agenda items that are to the right. First of all, Family Housing Office. This is where we fall in the hierarchy of MCI West under GF. Down here, we also have responsibility, oversight of 2 public-private venture partners. We work with NAVFAC Southwest along with our partners on a daily basis. We have 16 major core functions that we perform in housing. Tonight we're going to talk about 4 of those core functions that are here. First one we're going to talk about is the RECEP waiver process. I'm responsible for the oversight of the RECEP waiver process for approval, disapproval, and the process itself. We have roughly 256 to date that are wavered. We have 1 wounded warrior and 255 EFMP families. I also have the referral process, and that's the application process in housing. We're responsible for that. when you come in and put in your application, via it through the electronic system or a walk-in, we have that piece. Now, Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton Housing, we do have all our forms set up electronically where you can fill them all out with a .mil account, dump them into a database, and then we process your application. Also we have is the public-private venture liaison section within housing that works with the partners on a daily basis. We also work the housing market analysis as well, and we'll talk about that more here in just a moment. Up on the top right-hand corner, I want to start off to clear up any myth of the change of the control date. When, as of August 2014, when you have a set of web orders, along with the 1746 application for housing, you marry those two up, you submit them to the database or fax them or however you get it to the housing office. Once it arrives at the housing office, then that's your date of control date, not the old method of your detached date. So the two documents, web orders, application, drop it to that housing office, control date's established. We also have 83 different wait lists aboard Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, bedroom size and rank, that we manage on a daily basis. We also manage the EMH Enterprise Military Housing System, which is a huge database, and within that database it covers from a 3-star general that we have aboard the installation all the way down to a private. Anyone who lives in housing's information is put into that database. Then we have the asset management piece. I do review different budgets and capitalization plans, long-range plans for the partnerships, also my own internal government housing budget. We also conduct inspections along with the partners. Okay, our AOR, or Area of Operation, for here at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton Housing covers from La Jolla all the way up to Laguna Beach and out near Hemet and Paris. So this area here is where we pull rental information and data from, and we do crime mapping, and at the same time a third-party agency from Los Angeles, what they do is they collect all the utility information within this AOR and what's the average and normal utility use. All that information goes into a database. Then I look at the information and I can disclaim up to 25% of what we draw from our tracks within this area of operation. If there's high crimes, the type of crimes, it's gang violence, and my folks ride along with those folks in different policing agencies to point out that area, so that way we disclaim it and make sure we're not putting families in harm's way. This information that's collected, once it goes into the database and then up through the system, then it establishes the locality bar rate for Camp Pendleton. This is an overview. We have 7,795 homes to date aboard the installation. 3 regions, north, southern, central, and then we also have 6 districts and then 22 various housing areas throughout Camp Pendleton. We oversee more than 1/3 Marine Corps' total inventory here, and our average occupancy this last year has fell out to about 93% across the board. We currently have close to 700 on the wait list today. So that's kind of how we're laid out here at Camp Pendleton. Okay, we have 2 public-private venture partners aboard the installation. We have the Hunt Duluth, which is where you reside, and we also have the Lincoln partner. Both PPV partners are responsible to own, maintain, and operate the housing aboard the installation. These partnerships deals are written for 50 years. Hunt became privatized in year 2000. And then Lincoln became the year 2003. So that gives you an idea how many years they've been around and how many years we got left to go. Also, the lease agreement is between, just like out in town, between the resident and the landlord. So the Don has no signature within that lease agreement, just to make it clear as to who the agreements are between when you rent aboard the base in privatized housing.
Bob, who's the Don?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Don. Department of Navy. So, thank you. And then we just returned 250 new units with Lincoln. Lincoln oversees about 7,083 homes broke out in this area. And in Hunt, Duluth, where you all live, is 712 homes. I want to bounce over to the CEL surveys, Christopher E. Lee and Associates. They run a survey, and right now, Duluth is in the middle of their survey as they're running it now, and Lincoln's already run their survey for this year. Very critical that you fill out that survey and return it. And I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute. But this third-party company, they do this survey in order to measure how well the partnerships are doing and also benchmark with out in town, with the industry standards. So it's all mixed together. They put these nice colorful charts together and percentages, and in the end, it kind of measures the performance of the partnership as to the resident feedback. Now, with that said, the other critical piece to fill out the survey and then send it back is because that could also be a driver for the budgets, meaning that if all the residents send back, hey, we'd like to see our playground upgraded because the demographics has changed, or we'd like to see this, or we'd like to see that. Through the survey process, that's looked at, and if there's a general consensus on it, then it's looked at close, and it could affect change. So it's very important that you submit your survey. And then once it's done, that survey goes down to NAFAC, and then to the partner, and then to us. Okay, we put together this three-step process, and that's for all residents throughout the installation. This three-step process was implemented so that way residents know what the hierarchy of the housing arena is aboard Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, no matter if you live in Hunt or Lincoln. So the first step is you submit a service ticket, or if you submit an exception to policy or a TOS or anything, and you're not getting satisfaction on a response, be it in any category, first step is go to the district office. Second step then would go up the chain from there, which would be to the RPM level or up to the operations level. Third step then would come to my office here with the Government Housing Office, Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. Very, very critical that we follow these steps. And it's 3 steps, so that way the resident doesn't have to go through 20 steps or a number of steps just to get to an end state.
Bob, if I could, I'm going to interject for 2 reasons. One is just to let everybody know we've got about 25 folks now already out there on Facebook. So thanks for tuning in. And when I did the introduction, I said, hey, we're going to be down here with the tables with our PPP partners, our NAFAC folks, our housing folks, the hospital folks, all that's down here. We've got plenty of food and stuff, so please come on down a little bit later right after this. But the reason that I really want to focus and do a foot stomper on how can we help is that what we've learned is that at some point in time when folks could not get a situation resolved with their PPP partner, nobody really knew where to go. They didn't know that we even had still a housing office because the deals between the residents now and PPV. Well, as you can see, we do have a role. Part of our role is to help mitigate any issue between a resident and our PPV partner. So we work very, very well together. And that 3-step process is really, really what we need to focus on to get all your issues resolved. Thanks.
Good. Reset, Energy Conservation Program. I want to bounce over to this now. The Reset program is actually a DOD-driven program back from September in 1998. It was written into the PPV business agreements that were back then, mainly with the Army and then later on with the Air Force. And then, of course, the Marine Corps and Navy came on after that. With that said, they had written a language into every agreement that the partner can charge for excess utilities. Now, that's all utilities. Right now, the Marine Corps is only looking at electricity at this point. The Government Housing Office here aboard the installation is the responsible oversight with both partners to ensure that it's being executed correctly. The purpose of the program is to reduce usage, and with that, it reduces cost. Neither partner makes money. It doesn't go into their pocket. It doesn't go into their financial waterfall within their individual company. What it does say, those cost reductions stay within each partnership financial waterfall to use it for recapitalization. Add things to the community. Replace roofs in out years. Demo and replace older legacy homes sooner than later, than at the end of the deal, more towards the middle or 3/4 of the way through the deal. So that's the purpose of it. So it's the cost, you're using less usage on utilities, and it's cost savings. BAW, we talked about that earlier, a couple slides ago. The BAW, 9% of Camp Pendleton's BAW amount is to be used for all normal utility use. All normal utility use. So if you're real high, that's why you have to pay, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But the BAW itself is established each year, and a part of that is calculated for all utilities, just like I mentioned earlier. This year, 9%. Okay, we started off with the program with creating all like-type groups, almost like when you go buy a car, year, make, model, amenities. So we added all the housing areas with all the same type of homes in these like-type groups throughout the whole installation. Second step is we ensured that all the homes had smart meters on them. So it's direct reads, and there's no interference of relaying or someone walking around as a meter reader. So that's the second thing. We did the campaign for all meters aboard the installation. What we do then, the next step is we'll take out all those homes that are not occupied for a full 30 days. So they won't be calculated in the monthly calculation. The homes that are exempt on a waiver, EFMP or Wounded Warrior, they're taken out of the mix for the monthly calculation. Then the remaining homes will be piled together with all their total usage, and then a baseline will be established, and the top 5% of high users and the low 5% of savers will be taken out of that mix. Then at that point, a baseline above, 10% above, and 10% below will be established. And it looks something like this. So, with that being said, if somebody falls down near this blue line, because this black line is the actual baseline for this particular month, if someone falls below this line, then they get a rebate per every kilowatt hour saved below the lower 10%. For those that use above the red line, which is the 10% upper buffer, will pay per kilowatt hour above the upper buffer. Here. Now, here in Duluth, you're on SDG&E rates. So you have a two-tiered rate. So the cost, depending if you're 130% above the line, way up here, you could pay two-tier SDG&E rate. If you're slightly above the line, below 130, then you're going to pay the lower SDG&E rate. Okay, this is kind of how your Manol bill looks. So some important pieces of this bill I want to point out. One, this area right here on the left-hand side of your bill, there's an email account. And it's also, that's the service center for Manol. So if you call Manol, you can call them on that account with that number, or you can email them a question, and they will respond to that question. That's what this information is here on your bill. Now, very critical and very important. You can go in, and I'm going to give you the email account, and you can set up your own account so you can monitor your own usage daily and actually see what usage you're doing, but it typically takes 24 hours. So if you want to check out a Monday, you're going to have to check it on a Tuesday because it takes a while to generate, because it goes from the smart meter to the relay to the database, housing identifier code, and then into the system. And the website for that is ManolUSA.com. ManolUSA.com.
Bob, we have somebody here, I don't know if I missed it, we have somebody here with RACP, with Manol, that can pull up their bills. If they come down, if they have any questions, they can pull it up.
Yes, we have a representative that can pull it up.
Okay, great, thank you.
So the other important piece of this here is right here, which is your rates. That's the rate chart for Manol. If you think for 1 minute that there's something wrong with your billing, over here, if there's something wrong and you think it's too high, your first course of action is to call the Duluth Housing Office manager here, and they will set up for a energy audit. Okay, an energy audit, and Duluth is very proactive in that. So you can call here again, and the team here will then set up an energy audit and come right out and review your home and see what the problem is. If there's an issue with the home and it's not performing correctly, then you'll be taken out of live billing, put into mock billing, and if any monies you paid out will be reimbursed. Once the home is whatever needs to be done to bring it back up, then it'll go back into live billing at that point. But critical that you call. If you think right away something's wrong, then call the district office. Okay, delinquencies. Let's talk about that for a moment. If you have a delinquency where you owe $25 or more, and it's above that amount, then 21 days after that billing date, you're going to receive a delinquency notice, saying, letting you know that you're delinquent and you must pay the bill, so on and so forth. Then 45 days from the 25 days, you're going to receive a second delinquency letter from the property management. Then 90 days from that, you'll receive another notice, and you'll receive subsequent notices that are on the bill that you're delinquent. At that point, once it's beyond 90 days and it's $500, then at that time the Duluth Community Office is going to submit that to the government for us to make contact with the command and the individual and figure out, is it the home performing or is the bill actually owed? And then we take the steps from there.
Bob, if I could, I need to have Tom probably weigh in here because it may be a little bit different than what you just relayed on the delinquency.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, yeah. So with your utility billing, if anything is owing over 31 days, we actually transfer your utility bill to your rent account.
Yes.
So it's in your lease. So your BAH will now cover any outstanding charges that are there. So in essence, then your rent becomes late because that's going to take away from your rent for the month.
Right, yeah.
So, and then we'll send you out a debt notice. We like to call you first. And then we'll send you out a debt notice. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, so far we've done 3 open houses last week. We're doing this one this week. And this will wrap up our open house series for this time of the year. And then there's my point of contact information along with Lieutenant Colonel Anderson's information if you need to contact us for whatever reason. But I do want to defer you back to the 3-step process first. So we're going to open it up for questions at this point.
Yeah, and if I could, just again, some of the ground rules just to make sure that we do this well. And I do have some folks that actually came, so thanks for coming tonight, to the families that are here. The questions, and to include those folks out there, I think we've already got several questions coming in through Facebook, which are really, really good questions. We appreciate that. And we'll probably do a couple in here and then go out there and back and forth, and we'll keep going until we run out of questions or run out of time. I'm looking for the questions that pertain to the information that was briefed. If you have a specific question concerning your residence, I think my house is hooked up to a light pole. That's why we actually have you sit down with either the partner as well as RACP, or in this case, your carrier, and they can actually walk you through that and set you up for an energy audit. if there's a question where you're not sure where it lands, bring it out, and we'll see what we can do to answer it the best we can. So with that, we'll go ahead, and I think you might have had a question, and I'll turn it back over to Bob to field the questions. I'll be on standby to do what I can do representing the command here. But over to you, Bob. Questions start here, then we'll go out to those folks out on Facebook.
Anyone in there? Yes.
Okay, so my question is, and you guys totally just said this, how many days did you say before the bill would come out of BAH?
So is anything over?
Question too, make sure everybody hears. I'm sorry.
Sure, so the question is when do we transfer your utility delinquency over into your rent account, right? Okay, so it's 31 days. So there's up to 21 days your bill is due. And then we go pull it in a couple of weeks after that. We'll go pull the report. Anything over 31 days, we're gonna put on your ledger.
Okay, and I asked that just because I know there was a period over this summer where I didn't pay bills for whatever reason. So when I went to pay the bill, of course there's a late fee, there's a this, there's a that, but I don't pay attention to the number of days. So if would we get a bill if it went past the 31 days, or was it within the 31 days and it would come out of the BAH, but I got the bill in the mail with the late fee and I paid it? What is that?
So then what you need to do is bring it to our attention so that we can look at your account, because maybe you paid before we transferred it over, so you shouldn't pay that late fee, right? Because we're gonna transfer that over into your other account. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, can we pull some from Facebook, please?
Sure. This is actually, I think, something that should be explained in two parts. So first, the question specifically involves utility costs and how those are evaluated. So, sir, if you can address first how BAH utility rates are calculated, and then we'll go to the SDG&E piece.
Okay, BAH rates are calculated, like I had mentioned. I'll back up here a couple slides. Okay, for here, just like I'd mentioned, when we do the BAH data collection process on the rentals, at the same time, there's a third-party agency out of Los Angeles that's supporting the collection of what the normal utility use would be in the same area. So then that establishes what that normal utility rate would be in the private sector for on base as well. And then that information's packaged up and goes up to Headquarters Marine Corps all the way through determination to establish the BAH rate. So the question is where do we pull the utility information from? Private sector, added it to our landlord rental information, and then up the chain to be established for the locality BAH rate.
And that basic allowance for housing, the BAH, it's the same regardless of what uniform I'm wearing on board this installation. It's the same if I'm at 32nd Street living in a Navy quarters down there, as far as how the BAH is calculated. Is that correct?
BAH equals rate.
So everybody uses the same process. There's no different process for Pendleton or Miramar or anything else. It's all captured in the process.
No, it's a DOD process.
Right. Just to be clear. Thank you.
Now, the utility rates that are calculated for RECP, where are those rates determined, and how often do SDG&E, how often do they assess their rates?
Okay, so the question is how are the utility rates established and how frequently are they assessed?
Correct.
Put it just to synopsize it. They are set by SDG&E. They are set by SDG&E, and it covers by California region. So within a region in California, everyone who lives in that area all gets the same rate. Off base, on base, same rate. It's set every year around October to December, and then typically January they come out with new established rates for the following year.
Okay. Next question. This goes again is a reset question, specifically with regard to who manages the savings for the fund savings. So through the reset program, and how are those planning decisions made, and is it based off of the CDL surveys?
Good question. 3 parts. Okay. Could you repeat the first part again?
Yes, sir.
Kind of went right over me, I'm sorry.
So, who manages the savings for
Correct.
the RECP fund?
Let me answer one at a time.
Yes, sir.
I'm getting a little older, so I can only have so much brain capacity here. But who manages it? That savings goes into the financial module for this particular deal, and it's managed by NAVFAC along with the private partner, and all the way up the chain to the NAVFAC folks in the Beltway. So when they save that cost savings, there's a group of folks called NAVFAC LANT, which is on the East Coast, that has oversight of that as well. And so the funds dump right back in there, everyone sees the cost savings, and then planning occurs for what it's going to be used for. The next question, I believe, was about the CEL surveys and the impact of it.
The second piece was who determines what those funds will be used for, and then the third piece
Is the survey.
Okay.
Who determines what the funds are going to be used for? It's the private partner, NAVFAC, LANT, and the folks in DC. They look at the cost savings. The public-private venture partner here submits for their annual operating costs, and then that's where they submit for XXX projects. With that said, just to follow on with the survey piece, this is where it's important everyone do the CEL survey, because yes, the survey can drive spending that cost savings on something that you need here or that the residents want here at Duluth. So again, it goes back to the surveys. So I hope I answered all three.
Okay, yes. Again, another RECEP question. This question is, this is actually BAH first, is who the third-party company is that assists with the baseline, the generation for the baseline in the BAH, and then why isn't SDG&E establishing the average?
Okay, the name of the company is Robert Niehaus, and they're up in Los Angeles. And they're the ones that assist with the BAW data collection process. They have folks up there that have high-level degrees, and they do all this collection. They pile it up with the assistance of my folks in my office, and then send it up the chain for determination. The question is for the baseline with SDG&E. Is that what the question was?
Yes. Well, let me go to the next part. He's got two parts on this question. So thank you, Rob. The second piece, Mr. Marshall, is if residents are paying SDG&E rates, how is Minot even involved, and how many companies are tied up in the process for the RECP?
Okay, going back to the metering. Well, let me take it one step. We're on SDG&E distribution system here in Duluth. So the smart meters take the reads off the meters off your home, send it to the relays, send it through SDG&E, and it goes up to the database with Minot. Then it breaks out to the housing identifier codes. That's how that reporting process works. From the meter up through the SDG&E rate up to Minot. The second part of the question was, if you could repeat that, sir, please.
Other companies that are involved in the process, if there are, and if
Okay.
there are not.
And that's a good question. There are not. It goes straight from the SDG&E to Minot, straight out from Minot, two-step.
Are there questions in here? Questions inside before I go back out to an online question? Okay. All right. I got another one. This one involves the concessions process and how that process is determined here in Duluth in relation to other areas. You want to address the concessions piece?
Yeah, I will. So the question is about how do we establish concessions and when we do establish concessions. How we establish them and when we do establish them. So concessions are based off of supply and demand. So it's based off of occupancy. So when the property management has occupancy that's really high, there's no need to put out a concession at that time. If it's low and we need to drive up the occupancy and we have maybe an area that is not market, it's not meeting the market, let's say like Central, maybe not be getting filled, we may put a concession at that time. Does that answer the question?
It's based on market determinations.
So in a nutshell, yes, concessions are based off of market-driven requirements for the housing.
And they are different between the two partners.
Yes, and between the Hunt partner and the Lincoln partner, yes, there is differences. Absolutely.
Those differences could be tied to the homes, what the homes have or do not have in the way of amenities, correct?
It's tied to the occupancy portion. So if it's real low occupancy in that area, they'll offer concessions to fill the homes. If it's not at high occupancy, then there's no concessions will be offered. So it varies by market again. So, and it's all occupancy driven.
Okay, this question involves determining the like-type groups. Specifically, this question, she asked a question about why she owes money in relation to other families that who are home all the time. Can you talk about establishing the like-type groups and where those are found on the bills?
Yes. Okay. Let me. Okay, we established like-type groups, like I said, year, make, model, square footage, everything. And it doesn't matter if you have people that stay home or people that work, it's all measured off of usage within those groups. Now, there has been some discussion in the past, well, I have a 3-bedroom and I'm stay-at-home, or I have a 3-bedroom and I do babysitting, and how does that affect things? Well, what it does is will affect the baseline a little bit, but the one that's doing daycare using excess then will pay, for example. But all the groups are the same. And what was the second part of that question, Colonel?
Why are there differences between one person and their neighbor, potentially?
Usage. So some people could turn down that AC down to 65. Other people set it at 78, which is the SDG&E recommended usage. So on the meters too, there's also a way that you can read your meters, and we get that information out to everybody to see what your usage is. But if you have the like-type groups are all the same homes, year, make, model, amenities, everything. So if you're in a 3-bedroom here and you're not a stay-at-home and you have a 3-bedroom that's in your like-type group where they have a daycare, then yes, it is going to affect it somewhat. But at the same time, on your bill, it shows how many is in your like-type group, how many homes. Yes.
Did you say that the recommended temperature is 78 degrees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From SDG&E, yeah. Average, yep. So some people, and I've been to a lot of reset audits, and you see way low settings. 65, 68.
78 is hot. It's hot.
But that's the starting point. That's the average that they recommend, so you don't get rolling blackouts too. So now
it's supposed to be hot, basically, in our houses.
no, if you're hot, you can turn it down. What I'm saying is that's a benchmark that they use.
What is that based off of?
That's based off of what they would consider with the pull on the system that could cause rolling blackouts.
San Diego gas electric, that's the recommendation.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that that's what you have to set
Dude,
your
right.
their thermostat at. I mean, and
Well,
obviously some
and-
folks have some. Go ahead.
And RECEP is not based off of that either. So it's all, remember, all the usage compiled together and baseline established. That's just solely a recommendation from SDG&E.
I know some folks that actually use their garages as a carpentry center. So there's a lot of high power tools in there. There's some folks that have deep freezers, big hunters that want to hunt. So bottom line is, I think to get to maybe the gist of the question, that's exactly why we're having the ability for some of you all to come down here and sit down with some of our folks here, including having us pull up your bill right where you sit here and go over it. And if something's not making sense, that's when we set up the energy audit. We come down and we'll check every outlet in that house. I won't. The smart guys will determine, and you can look right over their shoulder and tell you if this house is operating correctly. If there's a problem with it, I know you've probably talked about this, we're going to work to remedy it. And if you had to pay an excess on your bill, well, that's going to come back to you if we determine that there was a problem with your home. I will just tell you straight up, the commanding general got here and his bill was out of whack. It was high. Didn't know why. He had a freezer that was in his garage that had a back compressor, and it was just pulling power, but it was malfunctioning. When it came to do the audit, they determined that was the problem, and that commanding general actually didn't have to pay that overage that he was paying because there was something wrong with the house. That freezer came with that particular set of quarters. He didn't bring it with him. It was part of the quarters. So I think that's what we're getting at, is that there'll be some questions you've got. All we can do is try to pull and check everything and do it that way. And I know that we've even shut down other homes adjacent to try to determine to the best degree possible exactly what's going on with your home. Follow up.
I'm just simply saying that not tied to the home, or we don't have deep freezers, we don't have any of that. I'm saying that 78 degrees is hot. That's almost 80 degrees in a house. And so other appliances pulling or not pulling, that is hot. So we're expected to basically be there as the baseline.
No, that's not what I said. To make sure I'm clear, what I said was that's SDG&E's recommended setting. That has nothing to do with reset.
If
Just a recommended setting.
If all your neighbors are setting up at 78 and you're setting it at 65 or 68, which and I get
your
it,
bill's
much more
going to be
comfortable.
much higher.
Because quite frankly, if with an air conditioner I've got, I live at San Luis Rey, so I'm inland a little bit. And we do have an air conditioner. I didn't have one there 10 years ago when I lived there as a young lieutenant colonel, but I do have one now in the quarters that I live in. And when it gets really, really hot, we try to do the ventilation, open in the morning, get the cool air traffic, but then sometimes you got to put the air conditioner on if you're a little bit inland like we are. And I don't set it at 78, 73, 74, maybe even 72, it just depends. So we're not, but we got it. They like to have it that high because every time, I tell you right now, every time there's excessive heat in Southern California, I'm always worried that we're going to have a power outage. And it's not necessarily because of us, it's because of just the state of Southern California and power drain. SDG&E, we're half power on the base and we're half power off base power. And I think you guys are all on SDG&E.
SDG&E.
Which to me is actually a good thing because it's that all our newer homes are plugged into to SDG&E.
A little more stable system. But that's just a recommended setting.
But I can tell we probably need to sit down with you right after this, maybe with the RECP. It would be worth it. It really would be.
Yep.
Great. We got maybe two more. Let's call it. You got some two good questions. Anybody else in here first? You get first dibs. You guys been quiet. Anything at all? Okay. You got a chance for two more, and then we're going to roll it up and move into the open house aspect of it.
Can we touch on whether or not an individual can see the homes that are included in their billing cycle if they were occupied for more than or for the 30-day period, or how many homes were included for a billing cycle in their like-type group?
Okay, so I believe the question is how many homes are calculated in their like-type group each month, minus the ones that weren't occupied?
Yeah, and is that visible on the bill?
Okay, so to answer that question is no, that's not currently visible on the bill. Here, you have a total like-type group. We're in discussion of looking at that to make a little more transparency. So that way, if you have 78 like-type group homes in your overall group and 5 of them were taken out for that month, then you reduce it down to 73, and then that would be the calculation. So that is in discussion, but currently right now the bill's got the whole like-type group. So.
Okay. The process for requesting an energy audit. One more time.
Process?
If you have a question with regard to the amount of your bill and how that process works, sir.
To request an energy audit.
Request an energy.
Okay, so the question is again to request an energy audit. Just to recap from earlier slide, the first thing you do is you call the district office here at Duluth. They will set you up with an energy audit, and they will go out to your home with a group of folks, and they will test that home from A to Z. So where you call is your district office here in Duluth.
I got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, again, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And again, thanks for the folks that came here today to visit with us. And thanks to all the folks that came on through Facebook. Again, we're going to stick around here for quite a while. And hoping some folks will come on down and join us kneecap to kneecap with all the folks that we brought here that we kind of try to, like I said before, help improve your experience here living on board military housing at Camp Pendleton. There's a couple of things that I think you should also be aware of for everybody that's online. And again, I have no problem with you all communicating this. The Reserve Energy Conservation Program has been an issue, and there's a lot of folks that question it. And you know, it kicked off back in 2002, as we know. There was an express purpose why the Department of Defense went with it, primarily because we were burning way more energy as military members than our civilian counterparts were. And so that was part of the reason, along with other energy conservation activities, even from the previous administration, that we went to that DOD program. I will tell you that based on what we did here at Camp Pendleton, and we went through some town halls and open houses this time last year because of a lot of concerns on the energy conservation program, the naval audit, there is going to be a naval audit. Through the IG network, the Inspector General network, the Navy Audit Service is going to come out and look at both East and West and do an assessment or an audit of the energy conservation program. So I just want you to know that at the highest level, you know, we kind of handed that over because there's not a whole lot more we could do at this level based on the concerns. So we took all the feedback and we sent that up through our chain of command at Headquarters Marine Corps, and now it's been resourced and scheduled for the naval audit to be conducted on RECP, both East Coast and West Coast. And right now it's set for fourth quarter, which means kind of towards the end of 2018. But there's actually a move afoot right now for us to see if we can move it a little bit to the left and do it earlier. So all I can tell you is we appreciate the concerns with this program. It's been on the books and a lot of other services are using it, but they're going to take a look at it, at least from the Marine Corps side of the house and the Navy side of the house here pretty soon. Other than that, again, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. The three-step process, How can we help? And we can't affect things we don't know about. And I don't think there's a whole lot of acts of commission, people trying to do harm to any resident out here, maybe some acts of omission where we really didn't know, we didn't appreciate the situation. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to improve communication across all of Camp Pendleton, Miramar, Barstow, 29 Palms, wherever you are. I know tonight we've got folks that are tuned in all the way from Quantico. And other ones that I've done have had people all the way outside of other installations in the Marine Corps tuning into some of these. That's how popular some of this has become. So I appreciate your feedback, and what I really need is criticism. But I need constructive criticism, not destructive criticism. And I see a little bit of that out there all on Facebook as well. Help us, help you all make this a better experience for you. That's all I've got tonight. Thanks for everybody, and thanks for all the folks that came here to help us out. Come on down for some sandwiches. There's a lot of cookies, so you can get your kids started on the sugar high for tomorrow night. Get them started tonight. We'd love to see you here. Have a great evening. Thanks, folks.